Hello everyone, it's me, Clayton, and I got finished watching the anime Akashic Records of a Bastard Magical Instructor. Now, when it comes to an anime like this, if you judge it based on the first episode, you might say that it's a very poorly done, absolutely cringeworthy show that's just light novel adaptation based on a magical high school number 5,967. Or, whatever large, ridiculous number you can think of. But if you watch it past episode 1, you'll see that the show improves over time and actually becomes a fairly good series that I actually would like a second season for. Well, let's get to the story, shall we? The story takes place in the fictional Alzano Magical Empire, where, at the prestigious school of the Alzano Imperial Magic Academy, a new part-time teacher named Glenn Radars has gone onto the payroll. Only problem, he's lazy, incompetent, and is not a good teacher in the slightest, which pisses all of his students off, especially a valedictorian named Sistine Fabel. However, when tragedy strikes at the school, Glenn eventually steps up and decides to not only finally teach well, but reveals that he might have a few secret skills that he's been holding back. Now, like I said, if you judge it based on the first episode, you're going to say that the show is cringeworthy. And yes, the first episode is absolutely terrible. The jokes don't land. Glenn seems like an incredibly unlikable character, and it seems like every character is just a cliche. Like, Sistine is a classic tsundere type who never respects her teacher. Glenn is just the lazy, incompetent idiot who's supposed to be our likable main character. Rumia is just the typical nice girl, etc., 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 etc. However, the characters do eventually get more depth to them as early as episode 2, to the point where you actually do ultimately like them. Glenn, for example, while he still has his jerkish moments, you can tell he actually does care about his students later on in the series, and that he actually does get a bond with some of them, especially Sistine Fabel, who initially might seem like a typical tsundere type who's always angry at her instructor for initially, to be fair, legitimate reasons, but when you find out her motivation for why she takes her studies so seriously, you actually start to fall in love with her character. Plus, Glenn's nickname for her White Cat, is legitimately funny, considering the amount of times they use that joke actually does not get old. However, for as good as Glenn and Sistine are, I didn't really like Rumia that much. Yeah, she's a nice character, but for the most part she just exists to be the typical damsel in distress, where she's captured at least 3 different times in the series, and needs Glenn's help in order to be saved. In fact, one of the main issues with the series beyond the first episode is the fact that the formula for the show is pretty predictable. As throughout the 12 episodes, there are 4 arcs that are split into 3 episodes each. The first episode is about the storyline being presented and for the conflict to rise up. The second episode is about the conflict to either have Rumia get captured or something to happen to Glenn's students, or both in some cases. And the third one is about Glenn rising up to deal with the problem and to save his students, Rumia, and, beat the bad guy at the end. Granted, they do switch things up a little bit in the last arc, but for the most part, it's the formula that the show uses for all 12 episodes. That's not necessarily a bad thing, though, as each arc at least does something a little different, and each arc improves in its storytelling throughout, to the point where the last arc actually does feel like a really good action magical anime. Not Full Metal Alchemist good, but definitely pretty good. Another thing that the series does very well is the animation. Even from the first episode, the animation is very well detailed, very spot on, and honestly does well with its environment. The character animation is fluid and solid. It helps out with both the comedy and the action, and the character designs are pretty spot on for the most part. Though the female outfits do look a little too revealing, especially considering that the Alzano Empire's Academy is supposed to be this prestigious academy that people spend years trying to get inside. Why would they have outfits like that? I have no clue. But despite all of that, Akashic Records manages to be a much better series than some initially would think based on the first episode. And it's just another example of you shouldn't judge an anime based on what it is via the first episode, or you might end up assuming the whole series will be terrible. So, the music is also very well done, with the opening song Blowout being particularly catchy, and the ending song Precious You being a good way to wind down after an episode ends. It just is unfortunate that you have to wait until the third episode to hear the ending theme and the fourth episode to hear the opening theme. But what can you do? So overall, Akashic Records isn't one of the best shows of its type, but it's a fun anime if you're willing to forgive the fact that the first episode isn't very good at presenting the series' strengths. 7.5 out of 10. You should check it out, especially if you're into magical anime. See you next time.